June 29th, Saints Peter and Paul. Apostles, solemnity saints who founded the Church in Rome on June 29th each year. The Church celebrates the joint solemnity of St. Peter and St. Paul, apostles. This day stands out among all other feast days, not only because of the monumental roles these two saints played in establishing the Christian Church, but also because of the mystery of their unity and diversity. They were very different men with distinct missions and temperaments. Yet together they formed the twin pillars upon which Christ built the foundations of his church in Rome. As St. Augustine of Hippo reflects in one of his sermons, both apostles share the same feast day, for these two were one. And even though they suffered on different days, they were as one. Peter went first, and Paul followed. And so we celebrate this day made holy for us by the apostles' blood. But on the reality of their unity in spirit, a unity rooted in love for Christ and in the Church's mission. Let us embrace what they believed, their life, their labors, their sufferings, their preaching, and their confession of faith. And Remus myth began to reinterpret the city's founding story through the lens of divine revelation. Rome was no longer just the city of Romulus, it was now also the city sanctified by the blood of the apostles. He worked alongside his brother Andrew when Christ first called them, according to Matthew's Gospel. According to John's Gospel, it was Andrew who first encountered Christ and introduced his brother Simon. Upon meeting Simon, Jesus said, "Peter and Paul came to be seen not only as saints, but as new spiritual founders of Rome," giving rise to the tradition of celebrating their shared feast on June 29th, day that would come to overshadow the ancient pagan foundation myths. This powerful quote invites us to meditate not just on the historical facts of their martyrdom, cultural context, reimagining the founding of Rome. It is fitting that one of the world's most important churches bears his name and marks the place of his martyrdom. To understand the magnitude of Peter and Paul's influence in Rome, we must briefly consider the cultural context of the Roman Empire at the time. Ancient Roman religion and mythology were deeply interwoven into the identity of its people. For centuries, the myth remained central to Roman cultural life. But in the 1st century AD, a new narrative emerged, one not rooted in myth, but in history, grace, and truth. Later, Jesus formally bestowed that identity upon him, proclaiming, "One significant myth concerned the founding of Rome itself, a tale dating back to the 8th century BC, and the visible head of the Church after Christ's ascension. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." According to this legend, Romulus and Remus, twin sons of the god Mars and the Vestal Virgin Rhea Silvia, were saved from death by a she-wolf, and eventually went on to establish the city of Rome. He preached boldly, performed miracles, healed the sick, and oversaw the expansion of the Church from Jerusalem outward. Eventually, Peter made his way to Rome, where he served as its first bishop. His tenure coincided with the brutal persecution of Christians under Emperor Nero. Tradition holds that Peter was arrested and condemned to die by crucifixion. Out of humility, he requested to be crucified upside down, believing himself unworthy to die in the same manner as Christ. Romulus, after slaying his brother Remus in a dispute, named the city after himself and became its first king. Upon his death, Romulus was said to have ascended and been deified as the god Quirinus. This myth, like many ancient founding stories, served to instill civic pride, national identity, and a sense of divine purpose in the Roman people. Enter Peter and Paul. As the Church began to flourish, the Christian community in Rome, likely familiar with the Romulus St. Peter, the Rock and the Keys. Born in the small fishing village of Bethsaida, near the Sea of Galilee, Simon, later named Peter, was a humble fisherman. "Come after me, and I will make you fishers of men." Both Simon and Andrew responded immediately, leaving everything behind to follow Jesus. "You are Simon, the son of John. You will be called Cephas." This moment was more than a name change. It was a prophetic declaration of Peter's future role. "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." This scriptural foundation is the origin of Peter's role as the first pope, the vicar of Christ on earth, after Pentecost. Peter emerged as the clear leader of the early Christian community. His tomb lies directly beneath the high altar of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. Peter's legacy is both pastoral and institutional. He represents the stability of the Church, the foundation upon which truth is preserved and the magisterium is exercised. St. Paul, apostle to the nations. Unlike Peter, originally Saul of Tarsus did not know Jesus during his earthly ministry. Born a Roman citizen in what is now southern Turkey, Saul was a devout Jew trained under the esteemed Rabbi Gamaliel in Jerusalem. He was zealous for the Mosaic law and saw the burgeoning Christian movement as a threat to Judaism. He actively persecuted Christians and approved of their execution, including the stoning of St. Stephen, the first Christian martyr. Following this life-altering encounter, Saul disappeared for a few years into the Arabian desert, where he entered a period of spiritual retreat, prayer, and discernment. His theology emphasized grace, salvation through faith, the universality of the gospel, and the mystical union of the believer with Christ. When he emerged, he began using his Roman name planned, launched one of the most impactful missionary careers in history. There, according to tradition, he was beheaded, a more honorable execution reserved for Roman citizens. The site of his execution is now home to the Abbey of the Three Fountains, where 3 springs are said to have miraculously appeared where his head struck the ground. One tradition holds that they were martyred on the same day, June 29th in the year 64 AD, though this is unlikely in the strict historical sense. An ecclesial authority, and Paul, the evangelist and theologian, bringing the light of the gospel into new lands and hearts. Their combined witness teaches us that the church must be both grounded and growing, rooted in tradition, yet reaching toward the future, firm in doctrine and fervent in mission. Regardless, the church recognizes this date as the symbolic unification of their martyrdoms. But everything changed on the road to Damascus. They were not born saints. Peter denied Christ. Paul persecuted him, but grace transformed them both into instruments of salvation. Saul, why are you persecuting me? This divine voice, Jesus himself, blinded Saul, who was then led into Damascus, where a Christian disciple named Ananias healed and baptized him. He represents the dynamic, outward movement of the church, the charge to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth. For the next decade and beyond, Paul crisscrossed the Mediterranean world, founding churches, instructing communities, writing letters, many of which now form a significant portion of the New Testament. Eventually arrested in Jerusalem, Paul used his Roman citizenship to appeal for trial in Rome. Paul's legacy is missionary and theological. One mission, 2 pillars, though their personalities and missions were vastly different. Saints Peter and Paul shared a common end. Both gave their lives for Christ in the city of Rome. Through you, the church was founded and began to grow. Please pray for me, that I may also respond to God's call with courage and love. Help me to be both faithful and bold, grounded in the truth and eager to share the gospel. May your legacy live on in the church today, and may I, by God's grace, take up my place in that mission. Together they embody the twofold mission of the church. Peter, the rock of doctrinal truth. Relevance today. From martyrdom to mission, the story of Saints Peter and Paul is not just a tale of ancient heroism, it is a living blueprint for every Christian. Their lives challenge us to reflect. Am I willing to leave everything like Peter to follow Jesus? It'd be an inspiration to live out our faith with renewed purpose and boldness. It is a call to action. Am I open to radical conversion like Paul, even if it overturns my entire worldview? Do I value the church's teachings and stability as rooted in Peter's authority? Do I possess Paul's zeal to bring the gospel into every aspect of my life and community? In a world marked by both confusion and spiritual hunger, we need both apostles more than ever. Prayer. Saints Peter and Paul, once Christ called you, you responded with total abandonment to his holy will. Saints Peter and Paul, pray for us. Jesus, I trust in you. Patronage and intercession, St. Peter dates. C. 1264, a D patron of Rome. Bakers, fishermen, locksmiths, brickmakers, masons, bridge builders, butchers, watchmakers, cobblers, the papacy, the universal church. Invoked against foot problems, fevers, frenzy. St. Paul dates. C. 3 to 64 AD, patron of Rome. Evangelists, theologians, missionaries, writers, public relations professionals, tent makers, rope and saddle makers, the Corsillo movement, Catholic action, and Gentiles invoked against, snakes, hailstorms, canonization, pre-congregation. May the legacy of Peter and Paul be for us more than an ancient remembrance. June 29th is not just a feast.